And I think we are live. So, welcome everyone to the second half of today's Global PM Days on the topic of resourcefulness. My name is not yet. Okay. Right. Now we're live. Okay. So, welcome everyone to the second half of today's Global PM Days. Thank you for joining the first half and thank you for joining the second half as well, because this time we are going to have greater speakers, fantastic topics, and the first one you will see that it's not only about processes and knowing what to implement. You need to get that attitude. You need to be a leader. And as a project manager, you need to do much more than just implementing the usual processes. My name is Tiago Ramalho. I will be hosting this second half of the day. I'm greeting you from Portugal. I'm very excited to be here. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you enjoy this. If you are just getting up on a Saturday morning, thank you for joining. If you're in your afternoon after lunch, probably, I'm sure the speakers will keep you awake with so many insights. And if you're thinking about going to bed, please get this 2 hours into your mind and really get the most of the speakers that you are about to listen. Without further ado, let me introduce to you William Stewart, coming from Canada. He is the author of the book and online course, Deeply Practical Project Management. And if you are the practical person, I'm sure you will love what William will have to say. It's not only about processes, you need to have that attitude. You need to be a leader to get your team into the success of the project, even before you know how to get there. William, the stage is yours. Any questions you want to throw into William, he will be more than happy to answer them. Just write them in the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was a very kind introduction, and welcome everybody from around the world. It's amazing how many countries we have represented here. Maybe the world is coming together. Yes, so I wanted to talk to you about the attitude and mindset of the project manager. If you know my work at all, you know I talk an awful lot about the importance of telling the truth, especially the truth about problems. If there's more scope that can be done in the schedule and the budget available, that you say so. And you ask your management to make some choices between scope, schedule, and budget. What is most important to them? And you must have a risk budget, and you must identify the risks up front. No one likes to think about risks, but there's such a high return on investment. If you just get the team to sit down and say, well, what could go wrong and how bad could it be? And then let's take a look at the worst ones and what could we do about it? I've often seen a third to 2/3 of the risk go away just through that process right there. So all of this is true, and it's the greater need in a lot of organizations to have encouragement to tell that truth. And if the project is in trouble, if the risk budget's going too fast, you let management know really early when they will be still receptive, when they can help, when they can manage the problem at their level. All of that is true. But it's not enough, and it's not your first priority from a mindset and attitude perspective. As the leader of the team, you set the tone, you set the emotional tone for the team. It's just part of leadership, comes along with it. People will see how you act and behave, and they will model that. So your first priority from a mindset point of view is to be optimistic and success oriented. You must believe you can find solutions to problems before you know what they are. And there's some good examples of this I'm sure we've all run across. I wanted to tell you a little story that illustrates this mindset, and then give you a very simple example of how that has worked for me once. So there's a kind of a famous story. You may have heard this story. It's very popular in some circles. It's very popular in Silicon Valley, for example, that mixed bag of people. And the story goes like this. Several years ago, the FAA, Flight Administration, Aviation Administration in the States, was taking a look at light aircraft plane crashes. If you were flying a light aircraft, a small plane, and the engine quit, you were supposed to look for a farmer's field and land in the farmer's field. Well, when they took a look at the accident reports for these incidents, they found that in a very high percentage of cases, the aircraft was found to have crashed into an obstacle, crashed into a fence, a pile of rocks, a ditch, a tree, a cow. And so the investigators, when they looked at this, they asked themselves, can there really be that many obstacles in farmers' fields? What is going on here? So they investigated. They took a look at the accident reports and they interviewed people and they delved down. And eventually they turned to the training. And it turns out that the standard training for someone that flies a light aircraft is if your engine quits, you should look for a farmer's field, look for a clear path to land, and then whatever you do, don't hit an obstacle. So they were looking all over for the obstacles and they were finding them. So they changed the standard training too. If you're flying a light aircraft and the engine quits, look for a farmer's field, look for a clear path to land, and then don't look away from that clear path to land. And a little while later, they found that the accident rate went way down. So this is a good story because it's an illustration that, yes, you should worry about the risks. Yes, you should status the risks. Yes, you should have a risk register. But if you're spending all your time worrying about the problems, you don't have the bandwidth, the mental bandwidth to find the solutions. I've told this story to a number of people over the years, and I've heard some very similar stories back. For example, I've heard it from motorcycle drivers. Apparently, if you drive a motorcycle and you take motorcycle driver training, one of the first things they teach you is that if a deer jumps out on the road, don't look at the deer. Look at the clear space behind the deer that you can drive through. I've heard the same thing from RCMP officers here in Canada, Mounties. When they take dangerous driver training, they're driving the highway and chasing somebody, the car spins out of control in front of them, don't look at the spinning car. Look at the clear space on either side that you can drive through safely. And I've heard a very similar story from elementary school teachers. I was teaching a class once and there was an elementary school teacher who had just gone through teachers college. And she said in teachers college, one of the first things they're taught is the importance of something called a growth mindset. Don't know if you've heard of this. This is a big thing the last few years. The idea to teach the kids that they don't have hard limits based on what they know now, but in fact, through education, training, help from others, and believing they can get better, they can go well past those limits. Big thing in teaching, especially at the lower grades. So that's your focus as a project manager, is to broadcast that attitude when a problem comes along. Because I don't know about you, but in my experience, well more than half the time, when you have a problem that you don't know how to solve, you can solve it. By definition, in the first minute, every problem is unsolvable. It's a problem. We don't know how to solve it. But if you just get team together in a room, you use the power of the team, and you start talking about it. You start talking about options. It's amazing how fast you can solve it. If that doesn't work, find someone else that's run into a similar problem. Use the repository of knowledge of the world. And it's amazing how often you can solve it. So that's the attitude you should portray. If people on your team bring you a problem, you need to not even frown. When people bring me problems, I've trained myself to laugh. It doesn't matter how bad the problem is. We just baked all the servers. We have to order new ones. Okay, what are we going to do about it? No idea. Let's get the team together, find a solution, find a workaround, find something else we can work on in the meantime while we get new ones. That's the attitude you need to display. So let me give you just a simple little example of how that attitude worked for me once. Maybe a couple points to this story. Many years ago, more than 20 years ago, I was on a project management team. I wasn't the project manager, but I was on the project management team. We here in Canada were planning a project to do aircraft retrofit. The Canadian government had 18 aircraft. They were old. They wanted all the insides stripped out and brand new insides, new equipment, computers, flat screens, everything put in these aircraft. So the company I was working for at the time in aerospace, a very large North American aerospace company with all of the problems of large companies. And it had just been through a whole bunch of mergers. So it really wasn't one company. It was like 6, 7, 8 companies that were just kind of smushed together. The late 90s were a troubling time from that perspective. So we here in little old Canada, this tiny little outpost in Canada, because it was the Canadian government, we were leading this and we were the project management team. So they flew in from around North America, the best engineers they had in aircraft retrofits. So they flew in, and I was asked to lead putting together the work breakdown structure, all the deliverables, not just the end deliverables, the internal deliverables, all the work that needed to be done, that the team needed to deliver to each other, and the precedence diagram, often called the network diagram, the flow chart of deliverables. So the first meeting that I called to put the work breakdown structure together, there was about a dozen of these folks. Most of them were American. They were really, really good, and they're a little arrogant. And most of them are older than me. So I called them into the room and I said, let's put together a work breakdown structure. And most of them said, what's a work breakdown structure? I said, well, what? I mean, I thought to myself, you guys are the best in the business. What's going on here? Well, it turns out that because of our merger history, these guys were really good at aircraft, but not project management. So I said, well, this is what it is. And they said, well, why do we need to do it? I don't think we need to do it. I don't think we have time to do it. I don't think we can do it, not now. I really don't want to do it. So what I just said was, well, stick with me just a little bit, because I think you'll find this will help you. It will simplify your world. We will all know what our pieces of the project are. Instead of this $140 million aircraft retrofit, we'll all know what the 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces of work that we have to do are. So, I mean, what do? Do we just start stuffing new equipment in the aircraft? And they said, well, no, of course not. You need an installation design, of course. I said, okay, great, fantastic. So just one, or we do more than one version? They said, of course we do more than one version. We call them a preliminary, a critical, and a final, of course. Okay, sounds great. Magic PM tool, wrote them, put them up on the wall, and on the whiteboard. I said, okay, so do we have reviews after these? Well, of course we have reviews. Fantastic. Put reviews up there. Now I had 6 deliverables up on the whiteboard and we were underway. So we kept on going, 1 hour max, always 1 hour max for these working meetings. I said, thanks. Come back tomorrow morning. I brought in my laptop, I drew it up. Next morning we worked on it, big A0 size paper, did a bunch of red lines, made more progress, 1 hour. Come back the next day, third meeting, made a whole bunch more progress. At the end of the third meeting, I took that piece of paper back to my desk. And as I was drawing up the updates, there was a steady stream of these very aggressive, kind of arrogant senior engineers coming up to my desk saying, Bill, when's the latest copy of the WBS going to be ready? Can you send me a copy? Because the world was simplified. Next, we had to do the flowchart diagram. We did about a dozen meetings for that. So we did the flowchart diagram, the network diagram or precedence diagram. We flowcharted these things. It was about another dozen meetings. Put it together into a schedule, calculated the schedule, critical path, completed the plan. Presented the plan to management. Management took a look at it and said, 3.5 year schedule, 3.5 years. It's got to be 3 years. 3 years maximum. So we all kind of looked at each other and went off into a room to talk. And the first thing I heard from the team was impossible. We knew schedule was important, so we'd already made the length of the deliverables as efficient as it could be. We'd put the resources in. You can't compress work past a certain point. We'd made it about as efficient as we thought it could be. So the team said to me, Bill, I mean, this can't be done. You need to go tell them. You need to go tell them. There's just no way. So success-oriented mindset. I did not give up. All I said was, well, let's at least go try. Let's go take a look. Let's take a look at the precedence diagram. And, you know, if we can't do anything faster, maybe there's some things we can do to move things around to make it faster. Geez, I don't think so. So we got together in a room, we took a look at the precedence diagram, and we figured out a way to do it in about 45 minutes. And I'll show you. I'll show you how we did it. Here is the final precedence diagram that went in the project. So here's the start. We got some system stuff and some software stuff, and goes along, and some flight testing and some production, and there you go. So when we looked at the version of this that we had, when they said it needs to come from 3.5 years to 3, after a bit, we realized that all of the installation work was independent from the other work. Originally, we had distributed all the installation work, putting in the racks and putting in the cables and putting in the equipment, doing the design for all of that. We'd put that in a very organized fashion through the hardware and software and sensor and other work, very nice and organized. But we didn't need to do it that way. For example, the height of a rack or the length of a cable had nothing to do with the final software configuration. That wasn't dependent on that at all. So we took that, and here it is in this path here in the middle, all this installation work. We took it out of all this work, dropped it down to here, a lot of it in parallel, and chunk, the entire project went to 3 years exactly. So what made that work? Two things. First, the precedence diagram. If you know anything about my work, you know I emphasize this precedence diagram, network diagram as the key tool. Too many of us are good at Gantt schedules, good at Microsoft Project, and we dive right to it. And maybe we can see it. Most human beings cannot follow Gantt schedules when you're flipping from page to page and the links are all over the place. The structure of your Gantt schedule must be your precedence diagram. One of the most important things I can tell you is get together with the team, 3 meetings minimum, these things on a board or a shared Microsoft PowerPoint document where you move blocks around and connect them with the connector lines. Connector lines in PowerPoint will stick to the boxes. So if you move the boxes around, they will stick to it. And you learn so much about this project. Your Gantt schedule then will be as minimally complex as possible, and you'll be able to manage your project later. That was the first thing contribute to that success. The second thing was, I assumed there was a way. I did not listen to these very experienced people. Can't be done, can't be done. I said, let's go try. Brought a team together, shared the brains, had a discussion, and something that we didn't realize, didn't know how to do, popped out rather quickly. So that needs to be the attitude you display to the team. And if you don't believe that at first, you need to fake it. You need to fake the can-do, success-oriented attitude, because your rational brain, if your rational brain tells you this is logically true, we can often find problems more often than we think. And then you go and experience that, because it is true. And then you go and experience it, then your emotional brain will start to kick in, because now your emotional brain will have had experience with that. Wow, I had no idea how to solve that. We got some people together in a room, consulted others that had run into similar problems. We solved that. I thought it was hopeless. I like that feeling. And then you'll find it much easier to chase that feeling in the future. So there's my little story. If you're ever in a light aircraft, you see a farmer's field and the engine quit, look for a clear path to land. Don't look away. Focus on that. If you're driving a motorcycle, deer jumps out, look at the clear space behind it. If you're teaching your kids, tell them, well, of course they don't know how to do it, but they can get those skills and figure out how to do it. And tell your project management team, we can solve anything. Let's sit down and figure out a way. And you will find over time that you will be able to solve problems you didn't know you could. And then if you've done all that and the problem's not solvable, then go have the courage to tell the truth to T3D management. The best we could do, we couldn't get to 36 months. The best we could do was 38 months. That's the best we could do unless you give us a ton more money. Then have that conversation, but try first. Okay, folks, I think that that's the story. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions about anything at all, I love the questions. Please fire them at me.
Bill, let me start by thanking you for taking all of us into your project, into that aircraft retrofit project, because you are a hell of a good storyteller, and I could feel myself really into those meetings and into that project management role that you played. And you really made things very simple for us to understand with your examples and the stories. I mean, thank you very much for that story and that insight. I couldn't agree more that it's not enough to go with the processes, the risk register and everything. I am 100% with you on the positive attitude. I try to go for that every time, even if I have to fake it. So that's also good insight. I would like to emphasize. And now I will pick up the first question from the audience, which says and asks, does it mean that you look at the solution instead of the problem obstacle?
Do you look at a solution instead of the problem? I'm not sure exactly what you mean there, but if what you're saying is that, well, let me put it this way. Maybe this is part of the answer. I love Star Trek Next Generation, and I love Jean-Luc Picard, and not just because the actor's name is Patrick Stewart. And there's something happens again and again and again in Star Trek Next Generation. They encounter a problem. And Jean-Luc Picard comes up with the direction. It'd be something like they come to him and they say, our maneuvering engines are out. There's no way for us to use our maneuvering engines to get through the asteroid belt. And he will say, well, we'll just have to figure out a way to get through the asteroid belt without our maneuvering engines. And they'll go, oh, okay. And they split off and they go and try to find a way to get through without the maneuvering engines. Obviously, That's the solution. How to implement that is a different question. So this happens a lot in projects. Someone says, we can't do it that way. Okay, we'll have to find a different way to do it. These two things are in opposition. We'll have to find a way to make them simpatico. You flip the problem, define the solution, step one, and then go figure out how to make that happen. So you might be muted, Diego.
Yeah, I am. So I was saying a lot of impressive comments in the chat. So very inspiring. Nothing is impossible. I think this is probably one of the messages that you wanted to signal to our listeners. We have someone also asking, is there any way via LinkedIn to be connected to you?
Absolutely. I think my LinkedIn link is at the bottom of my profile on the speakers page.
Yeah.
And if not, just search for William Stewart or Bill Stewart. Bill is short for William. Canada, LinkedIn Canada. You should find me pretty quick.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question from Teresa. So having a big project, is there an instance that the project members are monitored by the management/stakeholder, like micromanaging, just to see when everyone is participating, or compromise instead?
No, that is deadly. That is deadly. That's the whole reason for having a project manager with the two A words, with the accountability and authority. It's so important. I mean, if you've ever been a boss of people and you've had your boss direct your people, you know how frustrating that is. They don't know the whole context. Your people will stop listening to you because, heck, we'll just go ask that person. So no, and if you're ever the boss of a project manager, you must delegate. You see, the balance is, and you do the same with your team, the balance is you must aggressively delegate. You must accept that people are going to make errors and that there will be problems. You must let them figure out how to do it. You can provide some mentoring, some suggestions, but let them struggle the way through. But then the other part of the balance is you must follow up with them on a regular basis. So for your own team, the weekly heartbeat, you get together with your core project team, and your core project team members might have their own teams. They're not in that weekly meeting, but you're following up with the leads and empowering. If you get buried in micromanagement, you won't have the mental bandwidth to be able to do your job. And the same thing with your management. So I have been in situations where I've had to say to my management, it's really important that you flow these things through me. Feel free to talk to my team and ask questions. Questions are okay. But when you provide direction to them, you often are completely upsetting my apple cart because there's a bunch of details that you don't know, sir. There's a bunch of stuff you don't know. So please, if you're concerned about anything, flow it through me. I'm not cutting you off from the team. The team loves to see you wandering around and taking interest in the work and asking questions, but direction, please flow that through me. And you may have to do that more than once. And then sometimes you need to tell your team that too. For example, if you're working closely with a customer, you need to tell them, if the customer asks you to do something, tell them, oh, we can do anything, but I just would need an approved change request to come through the project manager, because there's so many impacts and any changes. Yeah, that sounds like a great thing. We could probably do that. Can you make sure you flow that through the project manager so it's organized? Yeah. Hierarchies are sometimes really useful. Yes, we want to work by consensus. Yes, we want to cut red tape. Yes, we want empowered teams. All of that is very true. But if you want to get things done, there needs to be one coach on the team. You can't have the first baseman telling the pitcher what pitch to throw. Hierarchies are useful for getting things done, as long as they are servant leadership hierarchies. They're good managers. Then things work.
Perfect advice. That's really, really important. And oftentimes people don't really know that, and they are all over the place with everyone, and they're not allowing people to breathe and to do their work.
Oh, one last thing on that. If someone is micromanaging you, like say they're showing up hourly, try something like this. Tell you what, I'll talk to you at the end of the day or at the start of each day. I'll come and just give you a quick status update. You shouldn't have to do that more than once a week. But if you have to, say that. So that I can, really focus on the work the rest of the day. Or the rest of the week, I'll talk to you Monday morning, every Monday morning. Because see, they're terrified. Their boss is putting pressure under them. So address their concern about how things are going with short, infrequent meetings, and things might work better.
Again, very practical advice. Thank you very much, Bill. We are getting a lot of comments thanking you. We had more questions, but unfortunately we are out of time. We'll need to go. But as Bill said, you can find him on LinkedIn, and the link is already in the chat. So feel free to connect with him, and I'm sure he will be more than happy to share more and more insights with you. Thank you very much again, Bill. It was a pleasure to have this trip with you into that aircraft project again. That will for sure stick with me along with your advices. So thank you very much again, and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thank you.